as my kids were approaching teens, I distinctly remember having a conversation with my husband. I said, I didn't anticipate approaching perimenopause and puberty simultaneously. And
Oh.
I didn't anticipate the needs of a teenager. Because yes, we have finally arrived to the point where our youngest can be left home alone for brief periods. I can run to the grocery. He doesn't have to come with me. So the demand is different, but the emotional demand is
higher.
And
Welcome to Permission the Podcast. I'm Dr.T, and this is my sister,
Silvana, and we are two regular people talking about spirituality in our daily lives.
Each week, we're inviting you to the internal conversation. So let's get started.
With your permission.
Okay, welcome back to Permission the Podcast. This week is going to be interesting. We have two guests. Can we introduce this?
Okay, so Anne is back, and I have
Anne is back.
Oh, we're doing 4 episodes. This is a 4-episode series with Anne, and we have another guest, a good friend of mine, said. Zainab is her name, really.
Whoop, whoop.
She's one of the people in my corner, we've talked about several times, who are the closest people in your life, and she's definitely one of them.
Hi, good morning. I'm Zed, and I'm delighted to be here. And I'm really happy that I'm always someone that you think of. And the feeling is mutual.
Yeah. She's also a mother of 3.
A very interesting distinction among the rest of y'all.
Yeah, because I have 2. And Anne,
two plus a fur baby.
They matter.
They do.
Okay, so the reason why we came up with Motherhood is talking to you guys.
Yeah, we were having a conversation about being a mom, also letting our kids be their own self, right? Instead of feeling that connection of like, I'm always connected to them and feeling also the burden, I don't want to call it burden, but also feeling like, okay, this is my human instead of being like a mom and also being free in a way, or not detached, but in a way, yes, because they're their own self and we're going to do what we can to guide them, to teach them. But at the end, they're their own human, right? And so we were talking about that and how you create a balance and whatnot. But there's many things other than that. And I was thinking about it today, and I'm like, okay, motherhood. And I know Zed's a stay-home mom. I was never a stay-home mom. And Anne, were you a stay-home mom?
No, I took some time in the beginning for each one of them, but no, I was back to work pretty quickly.
Yeah. And so that I always admire Zed for making that choice, because I couldn't do it. It's not for everyone. So I want to ask Zed, how do you come to making that decision? How, I'm sure it wasn't an easy one, she had a career.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Gosh. Yeah. That's actually very emotional, actually. As you know, my oldest child was born, wonderful pregnancy, wonderful birth. And shortly after he was born, within a few hours, had a brain bleed. And we ended up transferring him to hospitals and spent 5 or 6 weeks in the NICU. So we were driving from Connecticut to New York every day. And I went back to work. And because of the nature of my job, I was able to take a little bit longer off from work than a standard maternity. It was unpaid, of course, but I was able to do it. And when I went back in the spring, the terms of my return to work changed. And my oldest son, James, ended up having, over the course of 2 years, from birth to 2, 7 rounds of brain surgery. And so for me, it was not necessarily a decision I made on my own, but it was certainly a decision that I made with somewhat ease, but it takes me back to those early days of just knowing that I'd be at work and I would get a call from daycare, and I would arrive at daycare and it was phone call to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician's like, don't even bring them in, right back to Cornell. So then it's a phone call to Cornell, and we would get triaged in the emergency room, but it was a very quick, like, check in, and then we're back up to the NICU, and as he got older, it was the PICU. But so, yeah, that's sort of how I made the decision. And then I was pregnant a year later with my second. And while being pregnant with her, he was still having surgeries. So it just got to the point where I was like, maybe I'll just go back I'll have another kid maybe and go back after that. And I just never went back. And I do think about it frequently. And then when I do, I think, oh, well, this is going to be very inconvenient to my life to go, to go back to work.
That's so awesome.
And last year, my husband offered me a job with him. And I said, well, how's this going to affect me? Because I play tennis twice a week. And is this going to affect my golf once a week? And he was like, I don't think you're ready to work for me. So now I joke and I say, I think I've become unemployable.
Well, I mean, motherhood has its very specific type of skills that are very transferable to
Yes.
high stress jobs.
For sure. And going back to that, where you said like unemployable, but in a way, I feel like you work more hours than anybody I know, right? Because she has 3. She's constantly driving them to every activity. You're always doing something for them. So planning a date to go out with you, it's like, hold on, let me check. Let me align all the planets. Planet said, I mean, Planet Sarah needs to be here. But, and that misconception of like, oh, you're a stay-home mom. You don't do anything. Meanwhile, and I think it has to do with me. For instance, I had a 9 to 5, but after 5 o'clock, I had a second job, which was the kids, right? So in a way, even though I'm not constantly working for the kids, I was doing both. And so that felt like 2 jobs, but you had a job that never ended from morning to night.
Did it feel like that? Like you were constantly working?
Well, it's a lot of work. Yes.
Yeah, I was just telling my kids the other day this routine that I had in the mornings when I went back to work. My my younger one, Henry, was probably 6 months old, and I'd convinced my mom to move in with us for a while because I couldn't find good childcare to get back to work. And my older one was 4. Leah was 4. And I would, before she moved in with us, I would drop kids at, preschool and childcare, 2 different locations, bring the car back home, walk to the train in my town, get on a train to New York City, Penn Station, get on a bus uptown, subway up to the Upper West, take the bus across, walk 10 blocks, work, race out. I worked at a school at the time, and they knew I had to leave by 3:30 to pick up my kids in New Jersey. Do that whole thing in reverse, walk home, pick up the car, pick up kids at different schools, and then your second job begins, right? You're totally exhausted. And then
what's
you
for
have
dinner? Hey, what's
make
for dinner?
dinner, keep them safe, give them a bath, read to both of them, tuck them in. And then you're just a puddle. You're
Yeah.
exhausted. And then you
Oh,
have to
but
do it again.
they go to sleep and then there's the laundry, there's dishes.
Yeah. There's you. There's you and everything else. Yeah. Not fun. Really hard. And yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And now they're teenagers. And like they say, bigger kids, bigger problems, right? So they can shower themselves and they can do a lot of these things themselves. But now I'm holding emotionally and trying to figure out, are they safe? Are they trying substances? Are they getting along with friends? Are they, right? What's going on? What's going on for them? It's a lot.
Yeah, I always say I thought I was a great baby mom. I I always worked in industries that had erratic hours, so I could function on little sleep, and I wake up and I don't need to come around. I can be chipper as soon as my eyes open. And I thought I was a really good mom. And like a toddler mama was fun, because I kept on a pretty good schedule of activities. As my kids were approaching teens, I distinctly remember having a conversation with my husband. I said, I didn't anticipate approaching perimenopause and puberty simultaneously. And I didn't anticipate the needs of a teenager. Because yes, we have finally arrived to the point where our youngest can be left home alone for brief periods. I can run to the grocery. He doesn't have to come with me. So the demand is different, but the emotional demand is,
higher.
and
Higher.
I'm like, what are you crying for? You just walked in the door. I asked you, how are you? Well, why are we shouting? and I actually am attending more parenting lectures than I did as a parent of a young mother. Our town puts on a lot of lectures. Our school puts on a lot of lectures. And I attend every single one of those lectures. And like things that I think, why are they doing that? I'm like, yeah, it is actually developmentally appropriate for them to be doing this. But it's harder. And, you talk about things like, like we didn't have cell phones and we didn't have computers that readily available. If you did, it was one computer tucked away in a family room, which we certainly didn't have. But now I'm managing phones. I'm managing what you're accessing on phones. I'm managing what your friends' opinions are of things.
I call that the phone police.
Yes,
It's exhausting.
And only 1 out of 3 have a phone, but it's still it's still a lot. And let me segue into a funny little story. We live in a very walkable area, so my kids will often walk home from school with friends, and they'll grab an ice cream or a pizza, or whatever. And last week, my youngest walked home with friends, and he's really good about texting us on his Apple Watch. And maybe an hour after they'd been out of school, a mom texted and said, did your kids come home with a phone? I said, well, my kid is not home yet. I said, but when he does walk in the door, I'll be sure to shake out his pockets. And apparently, this group of 10 and 11-year-olds had swarmed into our local CVS and bought burner phones.
Yes.
Unfortunately for my child, when he requested $20 through Apple Cash, I denied it. I was like, you're not spending $20 on sweeties. So I sent him 10 and told him to get a pizza and a soda. So he didn't actually have enough money to buy a burner. So I said to him when he walked to the door, said, because by the time he arrived home, his friend's mom had said, I've asked, my kids come home with a burner too, and I've asked and your kid didn't have one. So I said to him, your poverty has saved you. But that's the sort of thing I'm just like, and my husband and I both said to him, I was like, like when it's time for you to get a phone, we will get you a phone and we'll get you a good phone. You do not need, and I don't even know what this, I feel like popping into CVS and seeing what this burner phone actually looks like. Because I'm picturing one of those like Nokia brick phones.
Yeah, like the flip phone.
That's what I'm picturing in my head. So, but the funny thing is that the mother who originally discovered it said she'd seen the kids in town. And we always text and say if we've seen a kid in town, they look fine, they're behaving. And she said she saw her kid and he goes, Mom, with the biggest smile on his face, because it's the best day of my life. And she found out it was because he'd bought himself a burner out of CVS.
Oh, what's
So
next?
That's
we're
so
like,
funny.
we live in the suburbs of Fairfield County. I'm like, what are you kids thinking?
That's
Mhm.
hilarious. But
They're
Yeah.
copying. They're imitating us. They want to be on their phones.
Yeah. So
have
That's
you,
hilarious.
in all this time you've been a stay-home mom, have you encountered people just going, oh, you don't work?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's one of those things, especially you go to a cocktail party and like, oh, what do you do? And it got to the point where, you know, as soon as they realize you're at home, it's like you never had any life before you. You've not got any interests. You can't possibly have anything more than your children to talk about. And so I would start saying things like, oh, I don't do anything because I married rich. I did not. But it shut them up. And I soon realized that actually it used to hurt. And then I thought, like, actually, hold on. And in no other aspect of my life would I care about your opinion of me. So why do I
Okay.
care whether you think I'm a stay-at-home mom? And I'm like, yeah, and your wife is working or not, and and you're boring. So
Well,
I'm actually not boring, even when I stay at home.
Correct. There's nothing boring about you.
It's sort of like I drove a minivan by choice. And people would bully me about my minivan. I'm like, listen, my friend, when we come into this party and my Honda Odyssey keys are in my handbag and your Maserati is in your pocket, keys are in your pocket, and we're talking, I'm like, you didn't bring your car into the building. I can't. If your car is the most fun thing about you, you're boring. Because what are you going to do? Start hauling your car around the world? No.
Oh my
But anyway, I've
gosh.
been bullied out of a minivan.
Oh, good.
Hey, I can't say anything. I one time borrowed your minivan. That thing was awesome. I packed up Paola, her
the
kids, and my
doors.
kids.
I can't handle that. Hey, I'm the only one that doesn't have kids, but I cannot handle a minivan.
But they're so convenient.
They're
The
convenient
doors
when you
slide
have
out. No one's
the
dinging
doors
the
a
open.
bunch of
vehicles.
kids.
Yeah.
People just pile in. And I got a fancy one the last time I got one because they tried to bamboozle us and be like, there was nothing on the lot because of COVID. So I got one with the TV and stuff. And the kids were like, oh. People would get out of their car and approach their dad in his nice Tesla and be like, Mrs. Hoffhine's car has a TV.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, that's funny.
Well,
So-
it's about identity, right? What you're mentioning. I work with so many clients who are executives, right? Women, moms who are doing both. And it's always the same thing. It's like, people think because I work long hours or I travel for work that I'm a bad mom, right? And then somebody's staying home, people think I don't have a brain, I'm boring, I don't have any skills. And so we're always juggling this. And what I say, and to myself and to others, is as women, right, we have to support one another regardless of your situation, because we're doing a lot of holding regardless of what our jobs look like on the outside.
Certainly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I had a question, like maybe a series of weird questions. Does pregnancy feel like you're feeding a parasite? And do you feel like when you're kind of separate, does it feel weird to be separate? And how does that work?
I
You mean
did feel
separate-
at one point that I had an alien inside of me, especially when it moves at night. that you ever seen those movies, the alien?
The aliens.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sigourney
it
Weaver?
feels
Yeah.
weird and good at the same time. It's a mixture.
Yeah, it's been such a long time, and I had vastly different pregnancies. Like James's pregnancy was very easy, and I remember walking down the hallway at work with James, and somebody walked past me, and they were like, "Turn around." And I turned around. They were like, "Are you pregnant?" I'm like, "Yes." And they were like, "When are you due?" I'm like, "In about 6 weeks." I had such a tiny bump. I was like And they were like, wait, because they would come to my office and they just see me sitting down. And Zara was a very easy pregnancy. Charlie was more challenging.
Sarah was a big pregnancy.
Yes. And my whole face changed. Do you remember that? I was
Yeah, I remember.
unrecognizable.
I'm like, what's going
I
on
look
with
at
your
photos
nose?
and I'm like, who took that photo? Who greenlighted that? And said this is okay to memorialize forever? No. It should have been like, I don't know, Sci-Fi or something. I don't know. Yeah, it was, but she was also my best outcome, right? So she was a kid that people come and see me in hospital with, and I came straight home with, and I was one of those mothers that I wanted company. This like new thing of like, oh, we're going to see you in 6 weeks. I wanted as many people packed into my house as possible to visit me, because I also didn't want to be, I didn't want to be excluded because, oh, well, you're busy with your mom. Give me the chance to say no to things. Don't say no to me for me. And Charlie, I just felt dreadful with Charlie. Like I was never sick, but I just felt dreadful. And I remember like halfway through when I started feeling better, just being like, oh, thank God. Because this has been rough with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. Yeah. But I never, like James didn't move much till very late. Like it was like a couple of weeks before I had the baby that Ben ever felt him moving. Charlie was definitely more active. And he's like that now. He's got this frenetic energy. He's constantly moving, bouncing, shifting.
Brendan used to like one of my ribs. I think that's what it was too. Like, I'm like, oh, come on, get out of there.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I was feeding a parasite. That's an interesting take, T. I actually liked being pregnant. I felt like it gave me liberty to, ask for the seat, to eat whatever I wanted, to sleep whenever I wanted. I sort of enjoyed it. I don't know. That's my remembering now. I do know with my second, I had heartburn from start to finish. So it wasn't always fun, but yeah, I was a huge pregnancy. My daughter was almost 9 pounds, but I gained, I don't know how much, but it was straight out.
Because when and I don't know if this is like male bellies, like out, basketball outside. The girls is like,
yeah,
it's to the sides. It's bigger. I
It
had
was
2
bigger.
boys, and mine were,
You had a cute little basketball. People
tidy.
thought with my daughter, who always had very long legs and still has very long legs, they thought I had triplets. It was straight out and it was enormous. And I remember people going, well, the rest of your body's sort of normal, but like you have this watermelon. I mean, it was just enormous. Yeah, you would have thought she was 20 pounds or twins.
I do remember it might have been Zara, and somebody had asked in front of Ben if I was, are you sure it's not twins? And he got so irritated with them. And I was just like, I'm huge. And funnily enough, I gained almost the exact amount of weight with every single pregnancy, but had vast, with James, I did a spin class the morning I went into labor. With Zara, I stopped exercising at 9 weeks because she sat on my sciatic nerve, so that hurt. And like Charlie, the day I went into labor with Charlie, Ben was playing a tournament in Long Island, and I was like, I've got Pilates. And I was up at 5:30 in the morning, stripping the bed. And he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just stripping the bed. And he's like, I think I'm going to cancel my tournament. I'm like, well, don't do that, because I've got Pilates. So I used to buy my Pilates. I still do buy my sessions. You sign up for 6 to 8 weeks, and I'm like, well, it's the last of my sessions, so I'm going to go to Pilates. And then, like, as the morning progressed, Ben's like, yeah, I think I'm just going to go ahead and cancel. I'm like, well, that's silly. And he did end up cancelling, and I did not make my Pilates class that morning, but I was really irritated because I was like, well, I could just go, and I'll meet you in the hospital. I would leave from Pilates and go.
If only you could pass it to him.
You are a rock
But
star.
I was also like a gangster, right? Like I was due with Zara. I was due with her.
I
And
think
I was
drove
it
yourself to the
with it
hospital with who? Was it
with James,
with
because Ben
James?
was in Long Island.
Yeah.
So I drove myself to hospital with James, and I arrived in my little 4-inch heels because I'd had a meeting at work that day, and I'd gone from my meeting to the acupuncturist, come home, realized my water's broken, or on the way home realized I was like, okay, I'm just going to go straight to the hospital. And I walked in and they looked at me and they were like, I was like, I think I'm in labor. And they were like, looking like that, I don't think so. I said, no, really, I think I am. And they checked me. They were like, your water's completely gone. I was like, I know. I think I left most of it on the chair at the acupuncturist. And then Zara's, I went.
They sized you up.
They did. They were like, I'm not
did
looking
they-
like that. You're not.
Did they needle you there and then it broke?
They were like, oh, there's nothing left. They were like, where's your person? I'm like, I'm coming back from Long Island. And I remember calling him. I'm like, don't panic. Like, don't, like, whoever's driving doesn't need to, like, speed. I'm fine, but you might want to meet me at the hospital. And I was on speakerphone, so it was a car full of guys, and they're like, this woman's crazy. And then with Zara, I went to a party in the city in my minivan, and I was meeting a friend who was living in California, but her brother lived in the city. So we attended a party, and then we stayed at the party. And then I was like, and she's actually a doctor, and I kept saying to her, I think I'm in labor. And she goes, I don't think you are. I said, anyway, I'm going to drop you off in Midtown and then drive back to Connecticut. So I dropped her and this random man off in Midtown. And I'm like, oh, it's go time. So I called my husband's sister, who has to come from an hour away to meet us. And I said, don't call your brother, but it's time. Come. I'm driving down the FDR, timing with my phone had a contraction
Timer, like a
timer.
app?
So I'm timing my contractions, and then every 2 minutes I'm like, ooh, speed faster. Because I've also got my 2-year-old in the back.
Oh my God.
And it's like 10 o'clock it's like 10 o'clock at night because I overstayed at the party. Yeah. And so I remember got home and I said to Ben, it's time. And he goes, oh my God, we've got to find someone. I'm like, no, your sister's already here. And he's like, how long has this been going on? I'm like, and he didn't know I was still out. He'd gone to bed and I was still in the city.
Oh my gosh. She's using every moment. I was with my second, who was born on St. Patrick's Day next week. He'll be 15. I got a haircut, so I had hair all over me. I was with my mom, picked up my daughter at daycare, and we went and got some St. Patty's Day cupcakes or something. I step out of the car, my water breaks, and called my husband in the city and said, you better start heading home. I'm like, he's never going to get here with St. Patty's Day crowds at Penn Station. He goes, are you sure? I'm like, I'm sure. And he almost missed it because, the second one is just fast. But yeah, St. Patrick's Day, he'll always have a party. My first one, I was in LA. I had a broken rib because I had sneezed really hard, and somehow with pregnancy and I guess everything gets out of whack. I broke a rib. I couldn't sit down. I couldn't lay down. It was super painful. I was bouncing on the yoga ball for like 2 days, and I went into labor. And we're watching the finale of 6 Feet Under. If you haven't seen this show, it's one of the best finales maybe of all time. Has anyone seen it?
Yes.
No.
Well, I didn't want to miss the finale. So I just would have a contraction, pause, and then keep bouncing, finally finish the show, went over to the hospital.
That is
I wasn't doing Pilates like Zed, but important business.
That's hilarious. You had a second question, the separation thing. Once you give birth and you feel like, oh, they're out of you.
Now the thing is out there.
The thing.
No, I didn't feel a separation thing, but you feel like this, even though you love it before it comes out, it's like you see the baby for the first time, and it's just like, it's love at first sight in a way. At least that's how it felt for me. Like, oh my God. So Brendan was, he came out of me and he was so white. Not even funny.
I
He
remember
was
Yeah.
that.
so white. His hair was kind of blondish. And he came out of me and I was like in shock in a way. Like, I was like,
Is this right?
I'm like, and the nurse looks at me. She's like, don't worry. We know he came out of you.
Are you sure?
Because I was just like, I was so in shock. First of all, I had picked a Spanish name for him because I was so sure, like,
Jacinto.
no, I was going to name him Javier.
No. No, you weren't.
Yeah, I was. And
No. That's a no.
and he came out, looking like
Like a blonde
like a
white boy.
Brendan.
Is his dad blonde?
No, but
Was he when he was a kid?
he had lighter hair when he was a kid. Yeah, Brian did. His brother,
Mhm.
blonde. And I was like, what? And his eyes were sort of bluish. Well, they still are nice color. They're not blue. They're like, I don't know what they call
No,
them.
but they were gray.
They were like
Yeah, I was going to say
blue
gray.
gray.
Pretty.
Yeah.
And when he wears green and they look a little green, whatever. And I would be like, I saw his eye. I'm like, stop it. And I got that thing that you get said. Like everyone's like, oh, are you the nanny? How many kids do you take care of? And I'm like,
Oh my
I'm his mom.
gosh.
I only take care of my own children.
I will say,
Yo.
I think the best I ever got was sitting in the nature center. And my kids are a variety of shades. But Zara is blonde hair, blue eyes, pale
Yeah.
skin. And I remember nursing her because I was also a nurser because I was too lazy to do bottles. So,
That's great.
sitting at the nature center while my 2-year-old was playing and I was nursing her, and someone sidled up to me, sat next to me and smiled. So they did what I call smizing. It's not quite a smile. my sister and I refer to it as
Smizing you up.
smizing. Because it has a tone, right? The smile has a tone. And they said to me, they were like, what was the phrase they used?
A wet nurse?
Yeah.
A wet.
They asked me if I was their wet nurse, if I was
Yeah.
her wet nurse.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, this was mine.
Unbelievable.
And they were like, interesting. Just walked away. And I remember saying to my husband, I was like, I almost had a job because I was also an overproducer. So I had to buy a chest freezer from Costco for all the milk.
Wow.
You could have had a job.
I would have hired you. I needed you.
I nursed them all till they were probably about 18, 19 months. But then they had milk till they were about a little over 2 of frozen
That's
milk.
amazing.
Because I was a producer. But I also was the environment was right for it, right? Because I wasn't like, I remember when I did go back to work and I was having to pump, it was time consuming,
Mm-hmm.
Well,
your body just doesn't like it.
yeah,
Like I was an underproducer, unfortunately. And then when I started pumping, going back to work, it was just like, no, just dwindled quickly.
I was an overproducer too.
Yeah.
I'm jealous. It's like liquid gold. You could have sold it.
Listen,
Really could have,
listen,
all these
because sometimes I would go over, the bottles, right, for the pumps.
Yeah.
They're like about this big, and I will make more. So I'm like, okay, if I go over, I would drink it.
Oh.
It's like, it tastes better than cow's milk. It's sweet.
I never tried it. I
And
don't
I'm
like
like,
cow's milk at all.
you know how much work it took me to make this?
Put it back in. Recycle.
Yo.
Yep. I drank it. And I was like, and it tastes a lot better than milk, to me, at least.
Can't say I've ever tried that. So,
Really?
I'm not dead
Hey,
yet.
if people can hire a wet nurse, you can surely buy.
you know what? We're
Mhm.
not.
Yeah.
We're
gotta be a
moving on
market for
to the next question. There was actually a place in Connecticut that was doing like
cheese with
lady milk cheese.
Yeah, yeah,
So
I remember
Oh,
that.
yeah.
so I
Lady
did.
milk.
That's complete news to me.
It's also a fetish for many people.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah,
We're
sure.
not going to talk about that.
Different
So,
different program.
That's a different episode.
I did want to ask y'all if you felt like you had a spiritual or a conscious awareness opening, even with the actual giving birth or after, just having this whole human that is outside of you and kind of knowing okay, I made this person. I mean, you and another person made this person, but you know, there's a part where you're kind of containing the being for a time period. I feel like this is a very spiritual experience and can lead to an opening of sorts of bigger awareness, like oneness or something like that.
I wish I could say that was true for me. I I was always really grateful to be able to be pregnant, to have my children, that they were healthy, and I did not have that spiritual awakening until the last few years. But what did come up for me when I had the spiritual awakening and that time period, the first experience of true gratitude that I felt in every cell of my being was about being a mother. That motherhood is, to me, I'm the most grateful for being a mother, and I felt the pure love for my children. Not that I didn't always love them, but to actually feel that in every part of my body was the most beautiful feeling. I'm completely grateful for just that I was able to become a mother. I think it's the greatest gift.
Yeah. I don't know that I had a spiritual awakening, but as Silvana knows, like spirituality, religiosity is something I have my own thoughts and takes on that. I do remember feeling my instinctual self really came into actualization. And I remember like reading all the baby books and they're like, oh, you'll get to know your baby. And I remember looking at this, like, who the hell are you? I know you came from me, but like also like I had held James for maybe a minute or two because the hospital that he was born at, although we had a wholesome delivery, the hospital he was born at had a policy that if you were a minute under 37 weeks, you earned yourself a 12 to 24 hour NICU stay. And he was 36 and 5. So, I mean, as soon as that child was out, about 10 people from the NICU popped in like, hi, so we're just gonna take your baby. And they scooped him up and off he went. And then all of these things happened. So the next time I actually physically held James in my arms, he was 10 days old. So I was concerned that there was a lack of bonding. Now, we were there all the time, and I would just put my hand in the incubator and like rest my hand on his. But as his health progressed, like it was like one step forward, two steps backward. It was this back and forth. And every single time that we had to go to hospital, I would say to Ben, I have a feeling he doesn't look right. And it was something as simple as the way there was one day his eyes just dropped a little bit in his head. And I said to Ben, I'm like, I don't feel. And I think it was like a Thursday and we had an appointment or it was like a Wednesday, we had an appointment on Friday. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to call. I'm not going to wait. And I walked in and like they did the thing. And the doctor walked in and James's original pediatrician was an older gentleman. He was towards the end of his career and he was incredible. And he walked in and the first thing he said to me was, I'm concerned with the size of his head. And I remember he said to me at one point, I remember just bursting into tears. And I was like, I was going to wait till our appointment, but I didn't want to bother you because I didn't want to be like, oh, I don't want to be like this weird mom who's always on the phone to the pediatrician. But I was also like, and he said to me, what made you think? I said, I just didn't like the way he looked at me. I'm like, my baby looked at me funny. And he said to me, he said something to me that I will hold for the rest of my life. And he said to me, these are your children. You know them best. Do not allow anybody under any circumstances ever to try and persuade you that what you think and feel about your children is incorrect or wrong. And it gave me so much power as a new mother. And to this day, I know my children walking through the door whether something is off.
Mm-hmm.
And I know whether I should probe or back off. So is it spiritual? No, I don't think
It's
so. But
definitely intuition.
it's certainly intuitive, and
Yeah.
and if it doesn't feel right, I don't try. And one of the gifts I've given to myself as a human being is I don't try and gaslight myself. If I feel it, I feel it, and I won't try and explain it away. I'm like, this is what I'm feeling. This is how I'm going to approach it, and we move forward. And I certainly see it, now. It's not necessarily health-wise, but certainly like their emotions and,
Mhm.
I know when to needle at them a little bit.
But I like that you said that, right? I think there's a big difference when I'm working with clients they're always on, right? Which is their anxiety, their projection, but yours is intuitive around your child's energy, right? Not just how they look at you, but you are connected energetically. You can feel when there's something off.
Yeah.
And also that knowing of, they need to come into their own. They need to separate and individuate, right? So we're also allowing that leash to become longer. And even when they're 15, 25, 35, I'm sure you also know sort of when they need you emotionally, right? When to go closer and when to give space. It's such a hard thing you can't teach it,
Balance.
really.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For me, it was, I felt like the true meaning of unconditional love. I felt it and I knew what it was when I saw my son. So it was like, okay, this is unconditional love. It's just basically, I learned it from them, from both of them,
Mm-hmm.
really. And I opened up to returning to my gifts as well. Like, okay, I was putting aside all of the, my gifts in a way, like the intuition, like if I think it's going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
those kind of things. And I'm like, you know what, just bring them on. So I welcome them back.
Mm.
Okay, hardest age. How old are people's kids? Can we have ages?
2 and 3s. The 2, 3.
Yeah, how old are they now? The real people we're talking about.
My youngest will be 11 in May. My daughter is 13. And my oldest son is 15 or will be 16 this year, which is why the minivan had to go, because apparently he wasn't going to drive it.
And it's not cool.
It's not cool.
My youngest is 15 next week, my son, and my daughter is 18. She's a freshman in college this year. Yeah. And I don't know if I've gotten to the hardest age yet. And it's sort of different for both, I would say.
So
It's different for both.
for me, Brendan is going to be 18 this year.
My God.
And Aiden is 15. And so I feel like there's different stages. So if you're talking about what's the hardest toddler wise, I would say the 2s, the 2 and the 3s.
Yeah. My youngest he went through a period where he was 3, and I was like, he's a garden gnome. He's an angry little garden gnome. And he would go into these rages. And I remember, like, I would get so upset, and I would actually, like, video it and send it to the pediatrician. I'm like, what is going on here? I'm like, I called our school. We went to a small Montessori school, and they had a psychologist on staff. Like, it was a sought after child psychologist. And I called, I was like, I need an appointment. And they were like, for whom? Charlie. I'm like, our Charlie? I'm like, yes, that garden gnome needs to see a doctor because he's a terror. And I remember someone saying to me, but surely you know how to navigate the 3s because he's your 3rd. I'm like, my kids never went through the 2s and 3s. You know, for some people, it's terrible 2s. I think the 3s are a little bit, because their ability goes up, right? But their sense is still here. So well, the trajectory is not great. But that one was, and it was about a year. And I'm like, why is he so angry? And one of the other things I decided to be concerned about is you don't meet a 40-year-old asshole that just becomes an asshole. They were a 4-year-old asshole too. I guarantee it. They didn't develop. That was a character flaw for them. And so as a mother, one of my things is you don't actually know what your son parenting is, what the impact of your parenting is, till you set these people off into the world and you pop them into the world and they go on and they're either contributing members of society or they're not. So you don't know where your kids are going until they get out there, right? And I got to the point where I was saying to the doctor, I'm like, well, at what point is this developmental? Because I feel it's a little delayed. Like, why are we doing this now? And at what point is this his personality? And I was like, I don't want this to be his personality. I'm like, who wants to have an angry little person living inside you, like a little gnome? I'm like, and he's come around, but there were days, I'm telling you, like you talk about like what your day looks like, and I just get up in the morning and you'll go, and I had early risers, so we started at 5, but I didn't put my kids to bed till 8 so their dad could see him. So it was a long day, and as the day progresses, like preschool, normal school, after school activities, that the routine of the day. And I remember I would get him down to bed, and I would go and shower, and I would cry in the shower. And I would come up and do my nighttime routine, put my PJs on, come downstairs and prep the house for the day. And I was like, I didn't want to be, running around the house yelling at everybody. But that was my release. I had to release my emotions of the difficulty of the day. And I remember like the first, and these tantrums he had would last for like 45 minutes, an hour. They were sustained. And whereas other 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds, you redirect them. Okay, let's move on to, we're going to do this. We're going to do some painting and coloring. And Charlie was like, no, we're not.
That was
I'm
Aiden.
enraged and you're going to enjoy my rage.
Aiden was like that. He was a rager. Like,
I remember
who
when
are
he,
you?
and I remember like people would try and offer like, suggestions. Oh, let's do, I'm like, you try. And they're like, oh, it doesn't work. I'm like, no, because you think I wouldn't have tried that? Nobody wants to live like this. Nobody wants to live like with your kids screaming and crying. Like that's not pleasurable for him, and it's not pleasurable for the people around you. And I remember I would say to him, I'm just going to hold you. And I would like literally like bear hug him and like try and absorb all of that frenetic energy that he was exhibiting. And like, he is one of the sweetest children now. Like, he's like the kid that you'd call him on his little Apple Watch, and you talk to him, and so all his friends can hear. And as he ends the call, he's like, okay, I love you. And like, he is such a caring child. He's like a very snuggly child. But woof, that 2 to 4.
Well, those are the most sensitive children, right? Like my son was like that. We used to have trouble getting him over the threshold, as we would call the front door. Everything was, he was colicky in the beginning and then wouldn't fall asleep. My daughter was a great sleeper, easy. And I recognize now, like what Silvana was saying, when you're sensitive to things, when you notice and pick up on energy and other people's moods and energy, and even around the world, it's exhausting, right? It's overwhelming. And that comes out in that how they behave, right? Yeah. That's what it looks like. And so I know now I don't want to shut that down. I don't want my son to shut that down. And so as a teenager, he's still going through that, right? It looks very different, but I'm teaching him to be with that energy. I'm trying to sit with him and be present and let him, let some of that go. And he even said to me the other day, I think I need, like a karate class or something where I like punch a bag. And I'm like, first of all, I feel really excited that you can verbalize that, right? That you can understand that feeling of being irritable and uncomfortable and needing a release and not knowing how to do that. He does that with biking, but after a long winter, it's sort of pent up. But I'm like, that's great. And I'm going to teach you how to do it even if you're sitting still. And yes, we'll find you another external behavioral release, but I don't want him to shut that down, especially for boys. Sensitive boys, they're told in so many ways to like put that away, right? Don't express that except through anger or aggression. And it's really unfortunate. They're just, they need to be able to be with that energy.
I think what helped me too was when they were having the time, well, at least Aiden. So Brendan was super easy.
They lull you into a false sense,
Yeah,
false sense of security. You
I
think, oh,
know.
I've
And then
got
the
this. And
second
then
one
another one
comes
comes along
and
and you're
it's
like,
just
oops.
like, okay, they're each is their own human, right? Like they all have their own personalities, their own, So whatever I did with Brendan did not work with Aiden. So I had to reinvent the my whole motherhood thing. I'm like, okay, I gotta go back to the drawing board. What I found helpful was like whatever I said I was gonna do, I would do it. So if he would have a tantrum, I don't care where it was, birthday party, wherever it was, we're leaving, we're leaving. It wasn't like we're leaving and then I'm gonna leave. No, we're out. Left grocery carts full. I'm like, we're out of here, screaming back to the car. And I think that later on gave me a thing when I said, we're going to go. They were just like, okay, I need to compose myself or we're leaving the party, right? So I walked out from birthday parties, from shopping, from anything with a screaming, raging 3-year-old.
I love that.
And then I would take him home and I would put him in timeout, which was the thing that he hated the most, which was so weird. Timeout, really? Timeout works for you? Or I would lock him in his room because I put a gate in his room. So, stay in your room. When you come down, so I would go, are you ready to have a conversation? Nope. Okay, I'll be back.
It is funny when after Charlie would have his little moments, he would be so remorseful. And he would come downstairs and like cuddle up to you and be like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, it's fine. So we're going to do it again tomorrow? Probably. But, it's just like, okay, gird my loins. But, you speak to that. I think somebody once asked me what's the hardest part of parenting. And I'm like, it's consistency. It's consistency and also it's monotony, right? Like, it's like that there's breakfast, there's lunch, there's dinner, there's laundry, I'm like, when you're not doing all that, if it's just all fun being at the aquarium and the zoo and on holiday, it's lovely. It's wonderful. But it's the consistency and the monotony of parenting is hard, right? And one of the things my sister, who has a background in childhood, early childhood development and psychology, one of the things she said to me is, no empty threats, no false promises. Be consistent for your children. So if the behavior is not acceptable today, it's not acceptable tomorrow, it's not acceptable next week. And if you've decided on a way to solve this, then be consistent with them. Don't be wishy-washy, because the world is wishy-washy. Let them have a place to be safe and express themselves. And that was one of the things that would get me through his little moments. Is they happened outside of the house too, but your home is your home. And if you cannot be your full self in your home and experience all your emotions, where can you? And if you can't do it with your family, where can you do it? And there were days where, like my kids, we teach them we all sit and we wait for each other to all be at the table to start. And so Charlie be having his moment, and the other two are sitting there, and I'll be focusing on him, and suddenly I'm like, oh my God, please eat while your food is hot. While we wait for the garden gnome to figure himself out. And it's so funny. I have so many little garden gnomes around my house.
Oh
and
my God.
And I'm like, I would pick them up. I'm like, oh, it reminds me of Charlie. So I've got all these pewter garden gnomes. they're teeny tiny, but they remind me so much about my little garden gnome. And even now, it's like when he starts, and I'm like, are we going to be a garden gnome? And he's like, maybe.
I'll never forget this one time. What was it? Charlie was having Charlie was being Charlie, and he's 3 or 4 years old. And you're like, you've had it. And I'm with you, and you go, people call him high-spirited. I call him a little asshole.
Yeah. I was like, and he's going to be 40 and like this, and I'm going to be his mother.
And at that moment, I laughed so hard I was in tears. And I don't know if you were in tears because you just had it, or you were just in tears because...
I want to tell you, he is, oh my God, I'm laughing so hard. He is one of the sweetest individuals you will ever meet.
I think this brings us to a point where we have several sensitive boys that will become men on this chat.
Yes.
So Charlie, Silvana's boys, Henry's sensitive. So we have a lot of sensitive boys. What is there something that you're seeing as far as like sensitive men, and also like how you're raising your boys to be sensitive men? Because there has been for such a long time this idea of, men only have access to being okay or being angry, right? And the rest of the emotional expression is very much not allowed socially, and yada yada yada. And there has been more introduction or a call to action from women right now in the dating world, because these are my patients, that are kind of desiring men that have access to emotions, but it has this kind of tension state of, okay, I do, but I don't. What does this look like? Whatever. So it's kind of like a strange dynamic for men right now in their 30s, 40s of having access to their emotional experiences. Do you feel like you're kind of working with that as they're growing up now? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say, not just with my own son, but being out in the dating world again, being divorced, meeting a lot of, and with clients who are men, and because I do a lot of medicine work, as you know. So when I sit in ceremony, when men are doing the hard work on themselves, oftentimes, and it doesn't matter where they're from in the world, a lot of what is coming up for men that I'm seeing as a trend is around being in touch with their sensitivities, right? Their emotions, those things being pushed down either by an individual in their family or just culturally in general. And so it's really connecting with that. Men actually, the masculine side in all of us is the more sensitive side, believe it or not, right? Women are much stronger in many ways. Our feminine side is a much stronger energetically. We can carry a lot more, or your feminine side can carry a lot more. Men, it's all heart. It's all about their sensitivity. So if we can help them to keep with our own boys, right, to keep that open, it's just less wounding. I mean, in the day to day and parenting behaviorally, it's, of course, you have structure and rules and things that are not acceptable in terms of how you express that. But really the message in terms of, back to consistency, the consistent message that I always try and give is I love you unconditionally exactly as you are, right? You may not it's not acceptable for you to do whatever you want to do whenever you want to do it. That being said, I can tolerate these big feelings that you have, right? And if I can tolerate it and hold it, then I'm teaching you that it's okay, you're lovable exactly as you are, but also I'm teaching you how to tolerate these big feelings, right? And to continue to feel them, to keep your heart open. I think it's critical.
Yeah. So the joke in my house is you can't date till you're 25. So I'm like, don't smile at any girls. There's nothing to smile about. Zara, keep your eyes closed. Nothing to see here. And it's a joke. But like of recent, our oldest has kind of got a little friend. And one of the things as a mum, I always think I should gather myself around women who are in the same position as me that I admire, and I admire the way they parent, and people who are just a little bit above me with their ages because they've got experiences that I haven't reached yet. But also those parents have to be people I admire. And then people who have done it, right? Like, I remember meeting somebody at a wedding and they had 3 kids, same kind of age gap as ours. And they were such lovely young adults. And I turned to my husband, I'm like, look, they've reached the promised land. Like, this is what we're aiming for. It's like to be at a family wedding with my 3 children and people admire them because they're lovely human beings. It's the promised land. So I mentioned it to a friend at tennis. I'm like, oh, he has this girl that he seems to like. They're always texting and smiling. And I was like, he's not allowed. And she said, no, this is good practice for when he enters the dating world. Because right now they're just friends, right? They're not dating. She said, this is good practice. She goes, you have to learn how to be a good partner. And I thought, well, that's the advice of a person who's got a 20-year-old boy. That's what I needed. I needed that to be like, so I came home and I said to my son, because I just tease them all the time. I'm like, it's fine. You can keep texting your friend. And my daughter was like, she was my friend first.
Nice,
and it's somebody he
James.
skis with. And my husband was like, if any place is a safe place for him to be sweet on someone, it's in full ski gear, helmet, goggles, the lot. I'm like, okay, fair,
So funny.
fair. But yeah,
So
it's
many
like,
barriers to entry.
Yeah, because I'm looking at my little boy because he's 15, almost 16, right? Versus someone who's like, and I'm like, okay, in 3-4 years, I'm sending this kid off to college,
Mm-hmm.
So like, but my thing is, like we model it at home first, like how Ben treats me, how I treat Ben is how, like whenever my kids get a little testy with each other, I'm like, do you ever see Dad and I do that to each other? I'm like, we disagree on a lot of things, but we approach it with respect. I'm like, and I expect you to approach your siblings with respect if they're irritating. I'm like, you can't just, fly off the handle. You've got to work through those and tell them why it's irritated you. I'm like, because they're not gonna change their behavior to you if you don't express what it is that you don't like about what's going on. But yeah, like sending these people off into the world and expecting them to respect themselves and respect the people around them. And, we certainly, when we hear things around our house, I'm like, oh, nope, we don't use that language. And I will say, the kids' schools do an amazing job of guiding them. They've constantly got professionals coming in. And like my kids will come home and they had a assembly in the middle school. And I said, well, what did you take out of that? It was about bullying. And my 10-year-old goes, you can't call people animals. I was like, I think that hour-long lecture had a bit more than that. So then they're teasing each other and they're like calling each other's names and they're like all of these names. And Charlie goes, you know what would be too much if I called you a hippopotamus? I'm like, you just called her a trunk. Like, you think that's better? And it was all in good fun. They were just teasing each other on like, trying to like, who can outdo each other on the teasing. And I'm like, So now the joke is, are you bullying me? I'm like, no, I didn't call you an animal. So that's what the 10-year-old took away from it. I'm like, I can assure you the psychologist that showed up did a much better job than what my kid thought. Because I attended the evening lecture and that's not what I came out of it with.
An animal. I used to teach those classes when I worked in the schools. I used to teach health ed, and it's so interesting from a child's perspective and the parents' perspectives. The kids totally get it. You talk about, your body's changing, having all these feelings, how you can express them, right? What's sort of appropriate, what's not. And the parents always go to sex. It's always like, we're still back in this era of, if we talk about it, it's going to make it happen kind of thing. And it's like, no, actually, all of the research shows if you talk about feelings, right? Kids are talking about feelings, and parents are like, they're going to take their clothes off, right? They're going to want all these things that I wanted at that age, right? I'm going to try and keep that away. But it's fascinating, if we just listen to our kids, if we actually sit with them, when they say whatever they say, and say, what does that mean to you? What does that feel like to you? Right? What does it make you think about? What does it make you wonder? What questions do you have? You learn so much more than trying to know, right? The thinking that we know. It's really amazing. It's usually not what our minds go to as adults.
So, talking about emotions and how help our kids express them. So I remember Brendan, I had Aiden already, and sometimes he would get like annoyed with Aiden, right? And Brendan probably had to be like, I don't know, 5, the most 6. And he was so upset with Aiden because Aiden did something, and all he did was like, and held his breath, and he was so angry, and he stopped breathing, and he was just like putting all this pressure on, to the point that he got a bloody nose. And I'm like, breathe. Like, now he has a bloody nose, and he's like, it looks like, like his vein was going to pop out of. And then he starts rubbing his face. So he has all this blood in his face. So I brought him to the mirror. And I said, look at you. And I said to him, you need to breathe and you need to tell me what you're feeling. I'm not, I can't guess. So do you want to look like this every day? And then he goes like, now he got scared because he sees all this blood on him. And I'm like, hey, Brendan, just tell me, what is bothering you? And so we would like practice. Okay, breathe, breathe, and talk. Tell me, Aiden did this, and that. Okay, let's talk to Aiden. So I feel like, and with time, Brendan, like, he's a great communicator. He feels something. He's like, Mom, can we talk about this? Blah, blah. Like and even now, like the other day I was talking to him, or he was describing himself, and he goes like, I'm emotionally matured. And I'm like, okay. And I'm he is. He's so ahead of the game. So when he's talking to, he had a girlfriend. He doesn't anymore, but he's talking to these girls, and he's like telling them how he feels, and I'm like, and And he's like, he's like, it's exhausting. She can't answer me. She can't tell me. And I'm like, well, you're a little advanced, but at the same time, you can also help them, because for me, it was really hard to get to that point as well. Coming from a mom that never expressed her feelings, right? And so these things we learn from our parents as well, how to communicate, how to express. I remember, I don't know, but I couldn't tell somebody I love them. My mom never told me she loved me, right? So that, just say it in different ways. But it's not going to even comment.
Well, I mean, I feel like my mom's silence gave me the gift to speak.
That too. But I mean, for me, it was really hard. Like I would feel it. Like I want to say, and it just doesn't come out. It'd be in my throat. So just being able to break that silence, and be able to express how I felt with words rather than actions, right? Because I was really good at actions.
Yeah, but actually knowing how you feel is different too, right?
Yeah.
You have a sensitive boy who also can put words to it. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Good job thus far. But
Yeah.
but so many adults that I sit with cannot drop into their bodies and know even where a feeling is held, right? That's something we practice. It has to be taught in some ways. If you've gone above the neck, as we say in therapy, right? If you're all cognitive because all your body has been shut down for so long, your gut, your heart, your lungs, everything, right? We're just repressing all these feelings. You don't even know where they are and what they are. So you absolutely can't put words to it, right? The only thing if you're taught that is, you're a garden gnome, you're throwing a tantrum on the outside. People think this is an angry person, right? And maybe they internalize that message, like I get angry, right? Like that's what I do, instead of him really knowing, like, I mean, maybe now he can, right? Like, what is that? Like, what happened for me? What triggered me? What did it feel like inside? What were those emotions? And how can I express it without getting to that point of exploding? It's really hard.
Yeah. And now he's my great athlete. I think he
Oh,
needed to move his little body.
totally. Totally. They do. And what do you do when you're doing sports? You're breathing, right? It's like the number one way to, help these emotions process, feel it in your body. It's amazing.
That's right. Breath and movement.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we're wrapping up, I feel like I have one last question, and we should maybe make it quick. But what is the one thing that people that aren't mothers can't really know? Because you've all gone through this experience that connects you, right? And I don't know what that is because I'm not a mother. And men can't know what that is because they can't hold that, right? So there's a through line for women that have gone through this experience that is almost unknowable unless you go through the experience. Is there anything that kind of comes up when you think of that? Like, what is the thing that the rest of us don't know?
That's tough. And I want to say to you, T, as I said before, just because you haven't grown a child inside of you, birthed a child, right? You're mother to so many people, right? In terms of nurturance and care and guidance, and you have a mother, right? And you have people who've cared for you. I really feel like it's very hard to understand, I mean, the physical of being pregnant and giving birth, but a lot of that doesn't necessarily lead to the emotional connection. I think fathers can be just as emotionally connected to their kids, aunts, right? Uncles, whoever. I think it's when you understand that human connection, that's the most sacred piece to all of this. I don't necessarily think, for me, there are differences obviously in how we all live our lives, if we've had a child, not had a child, whatever. But I think it's more about that emotional connection. And I think you can have that even if you did not physically give birth to somebody.
Yeah, because I would say, am I a better mother because I've got 3 and you only have 2? Or somebody who's got 6 or 5, which, I don't know. I feel like maybe it's more of yeah. And as to your point, like my children benefit from their dad just as much as I am. Like he is completely invested. He knows their schedule. He knows their friends. He knows their birthdays. He knows their allergies. He knows every single physician while working, right? So am I a better mom or a better dad? Like, like I always say, like, if something happened to me, my children would obviously be very upset. But I know that the partner I've chosen can guide them all the way through. Like when I leave the house, like, it was harder when they were younger, but when I leave the house now, I don't leave a checklist. Everybody has a shared calendar. So that means everybody knows where everybody needs to be. And I just go. And I know that he can take on that. We talk about like getting together. Like for me, like the winters I'm very easy because I've got a husband that's very much available. During this work year, for his work year, it's a little harder, so I have to schedule a little better. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I have these wonderful powers that you don't.
You've got the power.
Yeah.
You've got the power.
I gotta say that when you decided to, because at one point you were like, oh, I want to have kids. I want to have 6 kids. Teresa, this is Teresa.
Yeah, that was when I was a child. I was in high school when I said that.
Even in your 20s and whatever, you wanted to have a lot of kids. And I used to be like, okay, calm down. First of all, 6 is a lot. And then I remember at one point you decided, I don't want any kids. And you were like 100% certain. And part of me felt sad that you weren't going to experience that unconditional love from your child, which is what you can experience with other humans. But that bond of mother-child, and even breastfeeding and whatnot, I was just like, I don't know, because they could be little assholes, like, and then they smile at you, and then they give you a hug and they give you a kiss. What does that feel like? Amazing, right? And it sort of makes you, everything else is gone. So I do feel like there's this special bond between a mother and a child. Is it more special between a son and a father, or a daughter and a father? It's different. It's not the same. It's special. It's different, right? Like I have special connection with my father, and but so the only thing I felt, I guess, like, oh, you're gonna miss out on that. Like it's amazing, like, right? You wake up and your kids come to bed and they hug you and they, like, that's it's unconditional love. It's playful. It's very fulfilling and special. But can you experience love, unconditional love with other humans? Yeah. With your nieces, I mean, like, how many times you babysat for everyone, right?
This makes me want to get a dog. Okay, this is our episode.
Get 2 dogs.
This is what we have for you this week, the Motherhood. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Said. This was wonderful. I'm glad you were able to share about your wonderful experiences. And, we'll be back next week.
With your permission.
And that is all we have for you this week.
Make sure you follow Permission the Podcast.
And we'll be back next week with your permission.